Hello and welcome to part one of my story of how I picked up a cheap as hell caravan, renovated it, and lived in it in the UK for basically a year. At the beginning, I started with lots of notes and sketches and lists and diagrams. Before I had any financial means to build one, I decided to prepare myself as best as I could. And I made sketches with different interior configurations inside, just to get a feel for what the best use of space could be. I wanted first to buy a Luton van, because it has so much space inside. On a normal car license, it's the widest and longest and tallest vehicle that I could have. So I started with some cardboard models, which were free. And whilst I was planning out the models with cardboard, I was also collecting materials like pallet wood and floorboards and things like that. But then came my first major problem, and that is the Euro emissions rating on these vans, at least the vans that I could afford. They were all Euro 4, and as I wanted to be in London for most of the time, that was a £12.50 daily charge, which I just could not afford. And instead, I opted to buy a caravan. In fact, I found one for free. They just said, come and get it. And so I did. And the great thing about caravans is you don't have to pay any tax or any fees. So you just hook it up to a car and you just pay the car insurance and whatever. There is no legal obligation on any other costs on top of this. But everything free is at a cost. So this is where I ran into my second major problem. And that is the caravan used to be a drug den. There was a strong smell of weed everywhere. There were rotting remains of marijuana on the carpet and on the shelves. And as I started ripping everything out, I realized why it was free. And what a fool I was to get this caravan. There was mold everywhere. Everything was wet. The wood was all rotten and it stank. It really, really stank. And as I stripped out the rot, the caravan collapsed on me, which brings me to major problem number 3. And that is, as I was trying to get rid of the damn thing, the police stopped me and said the load on my roof is not good. They gave me 3 points on my license and £100 fine. And I became an anonymous celebrity because I made it onto Idiot Drivers UK. If you saw the post, it was me. I am that idiot. And that brought me back to square one. I had no caravan, so I tried again. I found one on Facebook and I thought this was going to be the one. But again, it was very rotten and broken. And as I started working on it, I realized that it's not going to be the one. There was a lot of work involved. It was moldy. It was rotten. There were components, essential components that were damaged. The tire blew up on the way back. It just wasn't a drug den this time. But here my luck was finally starting to turn. And that is because I accidentally won an eBay bid. Well, at least I forgot about an eBay bid that I placed. And for £62, I got this thing. So this is now caravan number 3. And it needed some work doing, but it was in pretty good shape. The people who were selling it, they just bought the house. It came with the house, so that they don't really care about it. So I donated the second caravan to some people in need. They wanted to do it up and live in it just like I wanted with mine. And the caravan before that really wasn't worth anything in the condition it was in. And this one had a boiler, it had a shower room, all these spaces. It had a fridge, a sink, an oven, wardrobe. It had some electrics inside it. So I got to work, stripping out the rotten bit, which was near the window right here. It was like sagging, and so there was some water ingress. And I began to strip it out in the evenings. I had a daytime job. I was parked by the side of the road. A lot of angry neighbors. Sorry guys if you're watching. But as I stripped it, the job was just turning bigger and bigger. There was hidden mold, there was hidden rot. So that whole front of the caravan was stripped. And I mean the whole of it. The floor was out, the walls were out, the front was out, and there was so much trash to get rid of. There was a lot of trash. And I didn't want any more points on my license, so I just put it into bin bags and did it bit by bit like this. So here's some pictures of me doing up the walls, and I will be showing a video of the process later on. But there's some flooring that I was putting in that was completely free on Facebook that I found. Very vintage panels. I painted the radiator black, and I gave the outside some more white paint, and my real favorite, this deep red, which I think just made it look super nice. Nothing complicated to it, just a roller and a lot of tape and a finer brush for the corners and the details. I'm gonna say it's not a beautiful job. I wouldn't advise you to look too closely, but from a distance, I think it looks pretty attractive. That brown yellow roof is what it used to look like, and then the shiny white is the new coating. Found some solar panels on eBay, 520 watts of solar on the roof, which is pretty a lot. I fitted everything myself. I did 12-volt sockets, fairy lights, an inverter, solar charge controller, and then this is kind of what it looks like after a revamp inside. A white lick of paint, a permanent bed which I custom built with loads and loads of storage underneath, a table that can sit in 2 positions, and when summer came, about June, July, I set off on my grand adventure. I was working from a laptop remotely, location didn't bother me. Then I quit my job and went back into the film industry when the strikes finished, and we lived happily ever after. Until I got burgled, of course, on a bank holiday weekend, the only time it was left unattended. And they stole loads of things, loads of belongings, and they broke my door. So now I've got to fix the door. And this is really where this video starts, because this is when I bought my GoPro. I stopped filming on a phone and I started shooting content of the actual renovation process. So it's out with the old door. Yeah, I mean, look at that damage. It's completely effed up inside. And as I started taking out the door frame, I started to find more and more rot. So out of all the kitchen stuff, put it all in the bed. Everything goes, everything. Turn off the gas. I found a new door on eBay or Facebook for like £10. This one had a window, so I was like, oh, well, thanks, homeless man, for robbing me. You've upgraded my door. But, the more rot I ripped out, the more rot I found. So this was all to the left of the door, underneath the kitchen, like, unit. It was in pretty bad shape. Like, I didn't need any tools for this. Look, I've got just my bare hands and it was coming out like breadcrumbs. But let's not dismiss the possibility that I am just insanely strong, which of course I am. Anyway, let's have a look at the state of the demolition. So bear in mind, this is a 1970s caravan. It was old. So this level of repair was inevitable. I decided to get rid of all the water pipes. I wasn't using any electrical pump anyway.
Сука, блядь.
That tap never got used and that sink was always clogging up, so I've just got really manic and just decided to break everything and rip everything out. The oven got 0 uses, so that was going as well. So I took out the boiler that never got used, I took out the oven, and that obviously left some gaping gas lines which I now had to plug up. And after double checking that the gas was off, I pulled out the unused gas lines and put little blanking end caps on the end where the junction once was, which looks a little something like this. Some gas certified tape, a brass end, whatever, and a 12 or 13 mil spanner. And provided that you're not completely incompetent in tightening a nut, the job is done. Meanwhile, inside, my mania was growing and I just wanted to destroy the whole thing. I decided to take out the whole kitchen unit. Out with the kitchen unit. Quick spoiler, I am putting it back in later, but I just decided it's easier to work on it outside of the caravan than in. But the most important factor is that the walls behind the kitchen unit needed renovation because they were all... Quick shot of my butt there for those who are interested in that sort of nonsense. Anyway, the walls behind the kitchen unit were also very moldy and very You know, I don't even mind being interrupted by an angle grinder because it is hands down my favorite tool. I love it. I love destroying with it. As you can see, in general, I love destroying things, but there is just something to the angle grinder that just gives me great joy. It's the superior tool. And look, now that I'm an adult, I clean up after myself. Fancy that. This is the state of the caravan with everything stripped from the kitchen. This is very similar to what the front looked like, it's just now the back. And because there was loads of wet, it meant one thing, that there is water coming in from the outside. So I had to basically dismantle that outer panel. First, so I could build a new inner frame, but secondly, because this wobbly thing on the outside is what makes the seal and it stops the water getting in. So I had to detach it and put new sealant on underneath. You can see the state, the condition of the sealant previously is just crumbling and no longer watertight. Anyway, let's have a quick meditation break. time to build the inner frame. The previous one was rotten, so I'm using the reclaimed pallet wood here and the circular saw to cut buttons. And I know you're saying, oh, Andre, look at you. You're so safe using that stick to push the wood along. You're so smart. Well, not so much, because previously to filming that part, I went to the hospital because I chopped off the end of my thumb. I then had an allergic reaction to the antibiotics, and it was all less than ideal. So please do yourselves a favor and use protection. My parents certainly should have done that. But anyway, these buttons are all free. I got them from I think it was a solar panel recycling company. They were just giving them for free. And there was enough of this wood to fit out the whole caravan, front and back. I just cut them down to size and made from them this pattern and this kind of web onto which the wall panels would be fixed. And it frames the floor, the door frame, the window, and a foundation for the kitchen unit to be screwed into securely. So this is the final result, and the next step is to line all this with hardboard. Not cardboard, but hardboard, which is flimsy but strong enough, and most importantly lightweight, which is important in a caravan. I'm cutting it with a multi-tool, which is an excellent device. It's this industrial vibrator kind of thing. Very powerful, very easy to cut through hardboard at least. And I'm cutting it so that the edges line up with the battens, so that I'm attaching the hardboard to something and not to just air. Really doesn't take a lot of hardware to attach them. Staples are strong enough, although my staple gun is not very powerful, so I'm having to hammer in the staples so that they're fully seated into the wood. And one thing I didn't show is like a wood type sealant that I put in between the cracks just to give it a more uniform look. And as I had put in floorboards for the rest of the caravan, I decided just to raise the floor here a little bit and put in this whatever this material is called, OSB perhaps, and I found that this was best cut with a jigsaw. There were a couple of awkward corners to cut around, and as you can see, I'm just working on the side of the road, so you can imagine how happy the neighbors are with all this activity. And as I was working, I saw that the UK got its first and probably last bit of snow outside, and the inside is looking pretty bleak because it had to rip loads of stuff out and move stuff around. So I was crashing on my mother's couch whilst I was doing this renovation bit. So here's the to-do list to come, and it was growing every day. Well, it's back to the angle grinder. As you can see, I'm very, very stupid here again. No safety goggles. What could possibly happen, right? Yep, so it was back to the hospital for me because I had an angle grinder fragment fly into my eye. So come on guys, just wear the damn safety stuff. Just learn from my mistakes. There's all that time in pain and suffering, and look, just one thing ticked off the list. And look at this. I replaced the rotten wood, but of course the caravan was still leaking from the outside. And man oh man, was this panel difficult to remove. I was drilling the hell out of it. Really, I broke, I think, a few drill bits, hammering it, smashing it, but yeah, finally it came off, and I had two massive holes in the back of the caravan, and the sealant underneath was disgusting. Obviously, this is where all the water was coming in. It was covered in moss, it was covered in rust, it was all crumbling. In fact, this bit brought me so much stress that I stopped filming. So just for the next bit, I used loads of sealant and then reapplied that panel that I took off. And I just really wanted to give up at this point. I was fed up with the whole thing. So I moved on to something a little bit different, and that is the gas line inside. Obviously, I removed the boiler and there was a pipe leading to nowhere. So instead of sealing it, I decided to put in an extra gas canister, a large one, because I only had two small ones at the front. And what you see here is a special tool for flaring the end of the gas pipe. That first little tool was a blade, and now this creates this flare, I suppose. And what the flare does is it creates a tight seal between this nut and whatever you're attaching the nut to, which in my case would be a gas regulator. Then I started preparing the kitchen unit because the gas canister would be sitting inside it, and then I fitted everything back in place. Obviously I got that oven taken out, so there was loads more space, and this is the kitchen after the major refit. And the caravan was almost done at this point. I went to a charity shop and found some pretty nice curtains for £4. So I got some help cutting them down to size, measuring them and sewing them. It was the first time in my life using a sewing machine. I was very kindly taught by my younger brother. And I've got to say, it was not a beautiful job by any means. But before that, I was using towels for curtains. Next to the finishing touches was reusing some old ordnance survey maps. I basically made a little jigsaw from them and It was like this feature wall of random places from across the UK. And this step took many hours actually. It was a lot of cutting, a lot of gluing, a lot of really precise sticking in place. And then the final steps, I just reviewed the condition of the previous electrics, removed some broken stuff, and put in this 12-volt array that shows the charge status of the battery. Also added a USB outlet. And just a little close-up on the charge controller. That blue box regulates and stabilizes the current from the solar panels, and the red switch on top is in case I want to isolate that and carry out any repairs. So I'm going to end part 1 there. If you've managed through that, congratulations. In part 2, I'm going to go abroad. There's going to be more crime and, of course, more problems. We love problems. Thanks and have a good day.